Relations podcast by the students, for the students, and of the students. Today, we have Krishna Satheesh with us. She will be telling us more about Nepal as she has been studying the country for a while now. She is an MA student at School of International Relations in University of Mumbai. She has been a speaker at United Nations headquarters in New York and also a research coordinator at the Christ University. She is interested in writing and also in the digital arts. So welcome, Krishna. So Krishna, tell us about Nepal as a country. How do you view Nepal as a country? What is the overview of the country?
First of all, thank you, Srishti, for that lovely introduction. Uh, in my view, Nepal is a country that is wedged between India to the southwest and east and Tibet to the north. So it's a diverse landscape in all sense of that term. It is multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and multilingual, along with being diverse in its geography. It is home to the Himalayas, eight of the world's tallest mountains, including the Mount Everest, all of which feeds Nepal's abundant water resources. It also has a vast history. It is the birthplace of Buddha, which gives us enormous religious significance in the region. Nepal's strategic position between these two big Asian giants also increases the eyes on them. Its position makes it a potential transit hub between the north and the south that connects China and India. There also historically has been a tug of war between India and China to expand their presence and influence in the region. But now Nepal has risen over that title of being a buffer state between these two countries and making an effort to increase its footprint in the global stage. And we'll be exploring how it does that in the coming podcast.
That's an interesting take. So tell us more about the politics of Nepal. What has shaped the current political landscape of it?
Speaking about Nepal's political landscape, it has been marked by chronic instability with frequent changes in leadership, making it difficult to hold down one stable government. With the most recent change in administration coming in 2024, with a shift in coalition. So, shifting alliances and power sharing deals have become more of a norm rather than an exception. Apart from this, a major problem that I've observed is among political parties, there is an increasing internal rift between them. So, this rift often brews from differing opinions in legislation, party organization, and now even religion. We can observe an increasing struggle to maintain unity within these political parties, which leaves the government vulnerable and also reduces the ordinary citizens' confidence in these parties. For example, the one portion of the ruling coalition, the Communist UML government, is in a tussle over party leadership currently. The Nepali Congress has disagreements about a multitude of things, including constitution and even recently religion. The growing unrest among the local population can be seen through the rising popularity of anti-democracy parties like RPP. They're one of the most prominent faces of the monarchy movement that has resurfaced in India, in Nepal. On March 28th of this year, Nepal witnessed a violent clash between the pro-monarchist anti-secular movement and the government. So the former had organized protests demanding restoration of a Hindu nation with the monarch at the center of it. These protesters had destroyed property in the capital, also vandalized offices of prominent newspapers like Kantipur and Annapurna Times. They've also attacked several Communist Party offices. Uh, there were also counter protests organized from the Socialist Forum in response to this violence. It was a major event as Nepal's tourism took a sudden hit, which lasted for a limited amount of time, but still, due to the international coverage, it was a significant issue that happened this year. The Indo Nepal border was also on high alert. So, this rising civil unrest coupled with declining intra party unity is what I would say the current government is grappling with.
Okay. What do you think is the economic status currently?
So Nepal's economy is showing signs of cautious recovery this year, is what I would say. There is a projected growth range of 4.4% to 4.6% in its GDP, which is an improvement from last fiscal year, but it is still short of the government's 6% target. Nepal is also on the road to become a developing country by November 2026, which is a graduation from its previous status as a least developed country. And it's also a milestone in Nepal's development's trajectory because the strides towards this achievement were started since 2010. So the current Prime Minister KP Sharma only credited this progress to the growth in per capita income, also Nepal's progress in UN's Human Asset Index and the Economic and Environmental Risk Index. So what I will say is that with this graduation, Nepal will be able to enhance its economic diplomacy. There is, however, a challenge looming here. There is a challenge of reduced foreign aid and potentially increased cost of international loans. This has already happened. If you take the example of World Bank increasing its interest rates from its previous 0.75% to the current 1.5%. It also shortened the repayment period to 30 years as opposed to the previous 40 years. So uh, apart from this, the Nepal economy is also grappling with several structural challenges. One of the biggest being its over dependence on remittance, trade imbalance, and again, dependence on foreign aid. It also has chronically low foreign direct investment, about less than 1% of its GDP, which is surprisingly low for compared to any other South Asian country. Climate change and natural disaster also possesses a great threat to Nepal's economic stability because they hinder progress. And as you mentioned, it is also a threat to tourism industry. Um, However, there are efforts that are underway to restructure the economy and also boost local manufacturing. To address these issues, the government is prioritizing infrastructure development, engaging with both India and China to improve cross border connectivity. It's branding itself more like an land linked nation instead of a landlocked nation, as it was called before. So, emphasizing on how its strategic location can be used to its advantage in terms of connectivity and trade. So, to increase its global engagement in these lines, we can see that the Prime Minister is attending the third United Nations conference on landlocked nations in Turkmenistan, which is it's an excellent way for Nepal to connect with similar nations across the world. So another way Nepal is seeking to expand its economy is through renewable energy, especially hydropower. So, in Indian companies like IREDA, along with Chinese companies and international organizations like the Asian Development Bank, are all investors in Nepal's hydropower. They're also trying to uplift tourism, as we have discussed, which faced a setback during COVID, but it is significantly increasing, especially considering the policy changes that the Nepal government has brought in. Some of it are yet to be implemented, but the decisions like catering Nepal's tourism to the working population, which I personally thought was very clever. Apart from this, another focus area for Nepal has been digital transformation. So the government is trying to bring in improvements and modernization efforts in order to expand its digital transformation, including collaborating with the International Financial Corporation to do so. So I would say Nepal is trying to revamp its economy through effective diplomacy and calculated policy changes to make a suitable environment for investment and expansion. But if I would say that there is a problem, like a challenge, bureaucratic red tape is one among them. Another is the slow moving pace of several Nepali projects, including the one that is funded with foreign investments. So that is, I would say, pulling Nepal's economic potential back significantly.
So, what are the main drivers of economy of Nepal?
Remittance is one of the pillars of Nepal's economy, contributing roughly quarter of the country's GDP at around 25 to 27%. It is more than both official developmental assistance and foreign direct investments, and it also gets its majority of remittance from India and West Asia. Agriculture remains the largest employer, engaging nearly two-thirds of the population. However, it still exist as largely subsistence based and vulnerable to climate shocks, as evidenced by the Madhya province and its current drought stricken status. So, modernizing is necessary, manufacturing is relatively small and localized but growing, and is primarily focused on processing of agricultural products. Tourism is a major source of foreign income and is steadily recovering in the aftermath of COVID. Hydropower is also an emerging sector with ambitious projects in pipeline aimed at turning Nepal into a regional electricity exporter. Nepal is benefiting from support under the IMF's credit extended credit facility. Foreign aid constitutes a significant portion of Nepal's GDP, fluctuating somewhere between 3.2% to 9%. With Nepal's graduation into a developing nation from its previous least developed nations list, we can expect this percentage decreasing and Nepal earning more self sufficiency.
How accessible is the general healthcare system for the public? And do you think the country's healthcare system is in good shape currently?
The healthcare expenditure of Nepal is, I would say, up to the mark of international standards. International standards ask for 5% investment, and Nepal is currently giving about 5.42% of its GDP to health infrastructure. Despite that, the accessibility of Nepal's healthcare system remains very, very low. So, how Nepal's healthcare system is structured is that it is across federal, provincial, and local tiers, with the policy and budgeting largely devolved into the seven provincial governments. For example, in provinces like Karnali and Sudar Pancham provinces, large swaths of the population, especially in the mountainous region of the north and western hilly areas, live almost 2 hours from any facility that provide healthcare, especially maternity healthcare services. And these provinces are also those that report highest out of the pocket expenditure in healthcare spending, reflecting both income constraints and weak infrastructure. So, according to my research, I came to find that 21% of rural Nepalis live 3 hours away from a public hospital, and the rest, especially in these hilly areas like in Karnali provinces, they face lengthy travel to reach even basic healthcare. So,
How is the internal and external security situation of Nepal? Are there any problems or is it in a good state?
Uh, well, South Asia is currently grappled with problems both external and internal security wise. We coming to internal security, while the decade-long Maoist insurgency that happened back in 2006 ended, the country still grapples with sporadic activities of small extremist groups and political unrest due to a growing concern over governance gap in the country. The political parties are equally responsible for this, is what I will say, because there are rising accusations of corruption and constant changes in ruling government, which fails to give a sense of security and stability to the public. Environmental instability is another issue that Nepal has, not only to the social structure but also economic development. Nepal has recurring earthquakes, though none of it were as devastating as the 2015 ones reported in Gorkha. The threat is still existing. So currently, Nepal's Madhya province has been reported a drought-struck zone, which leads to food insecurity. Thus, environmental degradation is a challenge that Nepal has to tackle. There is also ethnic and regional tensions, especially in the regions like Madhya, Janajati and Taru. So these issues, even though it stems from the creation of the constitution way back in the day, it remains unresolved. There is also a rise in religious extremism. Regions like the Rai have the highest reports of this. These movements, what they're seeking is the reinstatement of a Hindu state with the monarch at the center of it, as I mentioned before, and it's also threatening the current democratic foundation of Nepal that it has worked really hard to create. Uh, the bigger challenge of internal security lies at the border, especially the over 1,700 kilometer wide India Nepal border, which is also equally porous. So there have been concerns of smuggling and human trafficking that remains persistent. When we talk about external threats, one concern Nepal always has is balancing its policies carefully amid the strategic competition between India and China, all while ensuring that its sovereignty is maintained, it's not getting pulled into these regional rivalries. Both India and China have strategic interest in Nepal. It always has. Nepal's relation with India has been very special due to his historic and cultural connections. However, due to recent developments in bilateral relations, it has been damaged or stretched in a way, we can say. In this background, Chinese influence was growing in Nepal. Nepal has consistently linked economic and military aid to Kathmandu's adherence to the One China policy, and I will say that it's a thinly veiled reference to Nepal's ban on political demonstrations by Tibetan exiles. So you can see it's a two-way relations. Nepal, another external threat it has is the refugee issues. Refugees mostly coming from Bhutan or Tibet in early 1900s. There is an ongoing challenge related to the management and resettling of these populations as Nepal lacks formal asylum laws. Nepal's location is also an issue to its security because it has no direct access to waterway. It is largely dependent on its neighbors to facilitate transportation. Therefore, situations like a blockade or environmental calamity have repercussions on Nepal's economy and therefore its security.
So, when it comes to foreign policy, who do you think are the major allies of Nepal? And what are its foreign policy priorities?
So Nepal has been moving forward with its strategy of non-alignment, which it enshrined in its 2015 constitution and reaffirmed as recently as 2024 in the non-alignment summit in Uganda. So this means that Nepal tries to balance its relationship carefully between its two powerful neighbors along with the international community by actively seeking to cooperate and engage with the international community at large. So Nepal is also establishing itself in the world by engaging with varied countries, as I mentioned. UK, USA, Japan, Sri Lanka, West Asian countries are all part of this ongoing effort. They're also effectively trying to remove the narrative that Nepal is just a buffer state or a landlocked nation, effectively trying to rebrand themselves as a land linked nation. This reclaiming is also happening in Nepal's push towards reusing its unique strengths. For example, uh, its vast hydropower is a major potential that Nepal has, booming tourism sector, and a strategic transit location to advance its economic interest. So it's using all of these to its benefit. It is welcoming both private entities and international organizations for investments in these fields. Additionally, I also feel most importantly, Nepal is investing in regional and global initiatives like the Sagarmatha Samvad that happened in May 2025, which focuses on climate change, mountain reliance, and sustainable development, along with being a climate change initiative. I also think it acted as a forum to retrieve the history of Himalayas and connect it back to Nepal, where it holds its roots. And all of this in front of an international audience. Nepal also appears optimistic about regional dialogues and organizations like SARC or BIMSTEC and the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal subset that had happened. Being a strong proponent of regionalism, Nepal has tried to actively revive these organizations and tried to bring out these stalled initiatives, especially in organizations like SARC, and bring out progress from these stalled initiatives. Nepal also engages with multilateral institutions, IMF, World Bank, ADB. It depends on for its developmental aid. It is also attempting to engage with institutions like the United Nations in a multifaceted manner, with Nepal currently securing the presidency at ECOSOC. There are limitations, however, in their diplomatic engagement and route to self sufficiency. While they engage in these strategies, their diversification still falls short. By that, what I mean is that the number of embassies they have abroad or the number of contacts they have abroad still falls short as compared to other South Asian nations. This lack of multilateral pull was very evident when Nepal had failed to inscribe Tilarukot in the World Heritage List. However, continued multilateral as well as bilateral engagement is expected to steer Nepal in favor of international engagement.
What are the foreign policy challenges the country is facing?
Nepal today faces significant diplomatic challenges as well as, I would say, opportunities, particularly in balancing its relationship with two of its powerful neighbors, India and China. While India remains Nepal's largest trading partner and historical ally, Nepal is increasingly engaging with China through infrastructure projects and Belt and Road Initiative, which sometimes creates tensions and requires careful diplomatic navigation to maintain good ties with both. We know that the India Nepal relations were not at its best the past few years. There were instances and continue to be instances where members of the ruling party subtly point blame towards India for the rising religious extremism within its borders. But this roughness is softening, with Nepal visibly willing to engage with India bilaterally in order to further their interests. The Seventh Boundary Committee is an opportunity in this regard for Nepal. With China as well, with all the connectivity projects and aid delivery, there are also examples of China overstepping Nepal's wishes. An example of this is during the Sagarmata Samvad that happened in May of this year. There was an instance where the Chinese delegation continually referred to Sagarmata or the Mount Everest in its Chinese name. This is something the media picked up on. I couldn't find any government personnel addressing the situation. Uh, one of the very clear objectives of this conference was for Nepal to take ownership of their landmass and establish its Nepali name in the minds of the international community. So such a blatant disregard for Nepal's wishes, while all other nations either used the Nepali name or the Nepali name that is Sagarmata or the English one, was not taken kindly by the Nepali media. So we can see that there is a challenge in maintaining in Nepal's sovereignty and national interest when engaging with China. Additionally, Nepal struggles with diplomatic capacity issues, including understaffed embassies and political appointments that can limit its effectiveness on global stage. Another ongoing challenge is the country's aid dependency, which, while providing essential developmental support, can sometimes influence the nation's foreign policy decision and constrain its autonomy. Despite these hurdles, Nepal also has the opportunity to assert itself as a regional player by leveraging its strategic position and emerging as a voice in climate diplomacy and sustainable development forums, which is the best opportunity, according to me, that it possesses today.
That's interesting. So, what do you think are the national defense and security priorities of the country?
Nepal maintains a modest posture, reflecting its non aligned foreign policy and focus on internal stability rather than external confrontation. The Nepal Army handles national defense, while the Armed Police Force, a paramilitary unit that was created in 2001, focuses on border security, counterinsurgency, and law enforcement. Defense spending has always remained limited, hovering around 1.4% of the country's GDP. Um, so this reflects other budgetary priorities like infrastructure and social programs. Border policing is far more concentrated along the open and porous frontier with India. India and Nepal undertake a joint venture in order to keep track of their common border. They recently renewed this interest with the seventh Nepal India Boundary Working Group, setting a new timeline and conditions for the same. So it is clear to me that India holds a unique position in Nepal, rooted in deep historical, cultural, and economic ties. Though this relationship has strained in the recent years due to growing competition with China and and rising Nepali sensitivities about sovereignty, by focusing on trust building, mutually beneficial infrastructure projects, I feel like India can re-establish itself in the nation. Even as India continues to collaborate with Nepal through its neighborhood first policy and the message of not expecting reciprocity, through healthcare diplomacy, education, hydropower, trade, these are all sectors in which India continues to engage with Nepal. There is a visible lack of government to government interaction. This is very evident with the absence of Nepali Prime Minister visiting India. So that is, I feel like, a sector that India needs to look into to enhance its approach with Nepal. Uh, I would say that in my research, it was very evident that Nepali people continue to choose India for whether it is healthcare or for education. They did not let go of that historic people to people connection that we have. So we can enhance it by furthering our soft power image in the country. As Nepal seeks out more opportunities in its varied sectors, India can utilize timely delivery of projects to increase its foothold in the nation. Climate resilience is another talking point for cooperation. So, by engaging in cooperative discussions instead of either a Nepali centric or India centric approach, India can reinforce itself not as a dominating neighbor but as a reliable partner in Nepal's journey towards stability and prosperity.
That's an interesting take. So, as you mentioned, that the people to people connect is stable, but the connection on the parts of the leadership, the two leaderships of the country, that has been declining. So, I think it's time India review its neighborhood first policy and focuses more on Nepal. So, thank you so much for your time, and that's it for this episode.